Chapter 2431, Time flows on infinitely, like a mighty stream, like an unending dream. Published by Divine Tao Library. Translator, Salavan and Ashish. Translation checker, Pew Pew Lasergun. Editor and proofreader, Leo of Zion Mountain and Dale Ligerkeys. The might of the Emperor Authority bead had just brushed him, but Yang Kai felt as if his back was torn open and his internal organs had been displaced. He didn't need to use his divine sense to know that his back had been badly mutilated. If he wasn't proficient in the Tao of space and hadn't decisively ran, perhaps not even a piece of him would have been left. Yang Kai was gasping for breaths, his face was as pale as paper. Nonetheless, he managed to fly through the asteroid sea and find a large asteroid to hide in. He then summoned the sealed world bead and entered the small sealed world. This asteroid sea was in a moving state with some inexplicable power driving it in one direction, seemingly towards the depths of this endless star field. Who knows where it was going, but at this moment, Yang Kai could care less about that. Healing himself was his first priority. Near the medicine garden, Yang Kai sat down cross-legged before grabbing a handful of healing pills from his space ring and stuffing them into his mouth. Immediately after, he began to refine the medicinal efficacies. At the same time, he gathered the immense vitality dispersing from the immortal tree to use on himself. This time, he had been seriously injured by Feng Shi, but Yang Kai didn't worry about it too much. His physique was extremely resilient, and with the immortal tree planted in the medicine garden, as long as he didn't instantly die, he would eventually be able to completely heal himself. In order to escape the might of the Emperor Authority bead, Yang Kai had burned up some of his blood essence, which had left him in a weakened state. Therefore, even with all his resources, it would still take him a long time to recover. The shattered star sea was surging with storms as tens of thousands of Tao Source realm masters from the star boundaries poured into it, seeking opportunities, pursuing a higher martial Tao, hoping to advance to the Emperor realm while here. In the asteroid sea, Yang Kai was in a retreat inside the sealed world bead. He was completely focused on healing. 1 month went by in a flash and Yang Kai finally opened his eyes before softly exhaling. A complex look flashing across his eyes. He hadn't expected to take such a long time to heal his injuries. Worthy of the Emperor Authority bead refined by a third-order Emperor Realm Master. The might of the seeking passion finger had not only injured him but also left behind some persistent energy in his body, making it more difficult to recuperate. And it was exactly because of this that Yang Kai was forced to spend a month to eliminate the harmful residual energy. Otherwise, Yang Kai's recovery would have been a matter of days owing to the effects of his physique and the immortal tree. Yang Kai had healed without any issues, and his strength had returned to its peak state. Nonetheless, Yang Kai didn't rush to leave the sealed world bead. He first scanned and checked the outside world with his divine sense, confirming that it was completely quiet all around and there was no one nearby. After confirming it was safe and sound, he stretched out his hand. The next moment, 4 beads of different colors appeared in his palm. These 4 beads were the 4 seasons beads, relics of the flowing time Great Emperor. A long time ago, Yang Kai had once speculated that he would have an unexpected harvest after gathering all of the 4 seasons beads. However, he had never been able to find the bead of winter until he set foot into Ice Heart Valley's restricted area. Feng Zai's Emperor Authority bead made Yang Kai aware that he was not completely invincible here. With his current strength, he really didn't need to be afraid of the cultivators in the same realm as him, but he did need to guard against the hidden trump cards of these elites. Feng Shi had an Emperor Authority bead, so who was to say that Yang Kai would not run into similar enemies? Even if they didn't have an Emperor Authority bead, they might have some other cards to play. After all, the cultivators who could enter the shattered star sea were all rising stars of the star boundary, many of them descendants of powerful Emperor Realm Masters or elite disciples of the top sects. Many of these people could not be underestimated, as doing so would cost him his life. Therefore, Yang Kai eagerly wanted to improve his strength. He was now in the third-order Tao Source realm, so the next realm would be the Emperor realm. However, it wasn't that easy to break through to the Emperor realm. Without any appropriate opportunity, Yang Kai had no idea when he could get a glimpse of the Emperor realm. Since he couldn't break through to a higher realm, all he could do was pin his hopes on improving his techniques. The 4 seasons beads were undoubtedly his best choice. If he could comprehend whatever mystery they held, he might be able to gain the inheritance of the flowing time Great Emperor. This Great Emperor was proficient in flowing time force and was a top master of his time. If Yang Kai could obtain such an inheritance, it would definitely provide a great boost to his strength. So, Yang Kai didn't mull over it for long and immediately started to study the 4 seasons beads after taking them out, hoping to gain something. Surprisingly, when he took out the bead of summer in Ice Heart Valley's restricted area, it produced a kind of resonance with the bead of winter which was already there. However, when the 4 beads were gathered together, there wasn't any such reaction. Yang Kai didn't know how to activate the 4 seasons beads, so all he could do was put them together in his palm and pour his source chi and spiritual energy into them, calmly analyzing any reaction they produced. Yang Kai didn't become impatient. On the contrary, he remained perfectly calm. Gradually, he entered an ethereal state with no other thoughts in his mind, completely relaxed, as if his being was drifting through a sea of clouds. He completely forgot where he was and what he was doing here, simply immersing himself in this inextricable feeling. Half a month went by, then 1 month, 2 months. The 4 seasons beads were still unresponsive. However, Yang Kai was madly absorbing the world energy of the small sealed world, making his source chi denser and purer. His third-order Tao source realm cultivation was steadily rising and soon approached the peak of his current realm. One day, after 3 months of silence, Yang Kai's mind suddenly shook as a shock from the depths of his heart arose him. Immediately after, a scorching hot sensation came from his palm and he opened his eyes to see 4 radiant glowing balls escaping from his hand and dancing around him like ribbons of light. Each of the glowing balls had given birth to a very distinct and unique kind of principal strength. The 4 principles complemented one another, mutually restraining and promoting each other's characteristics. 4 seasons principles. Yang Kai's heartbeat became rapid as he realized that he had accidentally triggered the power of the 4 seasons beads. When he scanned them again, the 4 seasons beads that should have been in his hand had disappeared, leaving 4 radiant glowing balls that flitted about around him. Yang Kai immediately understood that this was his opportunity and he didn't dare to neglect it. Instantly closing his eyes once again, Yang Kai focused all his attention on comprehending the pulsing principal strength around him. Unlike the ethereal meditation state of the past few months, this time, he was actively trying to comprehend with a clear goal in mind. As soon as he spread his consciousness, Yang Kai sensed 4 extremely unique and powerful principles lingering around him: a pleasant spring breeze, a scorching hot summer, a withering autumn, and a frigid winter. They seemed to form a peculiar cycle, constantly overlapping each other, seemingly endless and ever-changing. Yang Kai fell into a deep state of comprehension. He was like an outsider that had been exiled by time itself, his skin slowly growing old. In just the time it would take to burn an incense stick, Yang Kai had been reduced to an elderly man with white hair. But he came back to life at the critical point, returning back to the peak of his youth. The entire experience was extremely strange. The 4 seasons principles were surging and even the environment beside Yang Kai was constantly changing. The spirit medicines planted in the medicine garden seemed to have experienced many years in just a moment of time, growing and maturing at a rapid rate. Except for the immortal tree and the firmament tree, which weren't affected by these surging principles, all the other spirit grasses and spirit medicines grew noticeably. Yang Kai felt like he was dreaming. In this peculiar dream, he kept wandering between 2 stages of life, young and old, using his own body to remember the feeling of the passage of time, his mind to experience the concept of passing time. Gradually, some vague ideas appeared in his mind. Yang Kai wanted to see these ideas clearly, but he felt as if a film was blocking him from doing so, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't penetrate this barrier. But every cycle made these ideas clearer and clearer. At some point, these vague ideas turned into enlightenment. Yang Kai suddenly woke from that unending dream and his face and eyes glowed brightly. The 4 glowing balls were still flying around him, like 4 colored ribbons. Nonetheless, Yang Kai remained absolutely still, an extremely serious look appearing on his face as he quickly formed a set of mysterious seals with his hands and he muttered a chant: "Time flows on infinitely, like a mighty stream, like an unending dream." His voice was very slow, and his movements even slower. But the moment he said this, a mysterious seal suddenly formed. The next movement, the 4 glowing balls that had been flying around him seemed to have received some instruction and suddenly turned into specks of light that drilled into his pores. Hong. An invisible and powerful aura rapidly spread outward into the surrounding area with Yang Kai as the center. After everything stabilized, a strange light appeared in Yang Kai's eyes as he cried out in surprise: so, it was time principles. The flowing time Great Emperor was truly remarkable. In this world, the only Tao which was more esoteric than the Tao of space was the Tao of time. These 2 Taos were extremely different from the rest, sharing some similarities in the sense that they were both extremely difficult to comprehend, and even harder to cultivate. The only reason Yang Kai was able to cultivate the Tao of space was because of luck and opportunities. Along his road of cultivation, he had encountered some cultivators who had gained some knowledge of the Tao of space, but as for mastering him, apart from him, there was probably only one other, Li Wuyi. Li Wuyi was proficient in the Tao of space, and was famous throughout the entire star boundary as a result. And as a third-order emperor, no one dared to find trouble with him. There were always a few cultivators who had learned some basic concepts of the Tao of space, but Yang Kai had never encountered anyone who cultivated the Tao of time. In light of this, the Tao of time seemed even more difficult to master than the Tao of space. But the flowing time Great Emperor had cultivated this exact Tao to an extremely high level. Yang Kai originally thought that four seasons principles were a representation of the four seasons themselves, a kind of derivative of time principles, but after comprehending this seal, he finally understood that the flowing time Great Emperor had already mastered the four seasons principles to the level of time principles. Thanks to the blessing of the flowing time Great Emperor, Yang Kai could be considered to have comprehended the initial concept of the Tao of time after obtaining the power of the four seasons beads. Throughout the ages, Yang Kai might just be the only individual who had cultivated both the Tao of space and the Tao of time simultaneously. Chapter 2432, Shattered Source. Published by Divine Tao Library. Translator, Salavan and Ashish. Translation checker, Pew Pew Lasergun. Editor and proofreader, Leo of Zion Mountain and Dale Ligerkeys. After quietly comprehending his harvest this time, Yang Kai slowly stood up. Liu Yang and Hua King Si were standing in the vicinity. They had come here at some point, probably attracted by all the commotion made by Yang Kai, but they remained far away and did not dare to approach. Seeing Yang Kai get up at this moment, the two girls looked at each other before they flew over. Master, what secret technique did you comprehend? Why did your appearance and physical condition keep changing? Liu Yan nervously asked. Did my appearance really change? Yang Kai, raising his brow, asked in surprise. He thought that it was just an illusion in his head and hadn't expected it to physically happen to him. No wonder I could comprehend time principles and form the seal of the flowing time Great Emperor's secret technique. It turns out that my body was constantly growing older and younger. I remember how the passage of time made changes to my body. I see, so that is how I managed to comprehend the Tao of time. You look really pitiful when aged, the nearby Hua King Si nodded. Yang Kai gave a slight smile. He didn't really care about that, as everyone would always grow old and die. This was an inescapable cycle. After comprehending the Tao of time, Yang Kai felt much more comfortable with such concepts and notions. After pondering for a moment, Yang Kai finally replied, naturally it was the flowing time Great Emperor's secret technique. Liu Yan and Hua King Si's eyes immediately lit up after hearing this. Liu Yan quickly asked, pleasantly surprised, Master, have you obtained the inheritance of the flowing time Great Emperor? Even though Yang Kai also had the inheritance of heaven-devouring Great Emperor, it wasn't suitable for humans. The Great Emperor's inheritance was different. If one could really obtain his inheritance, he or she would have a smooth sailing in the future. Yang Kai denied, shaking his head, I also thought the Four Seasons beads held the flowing time Great Emperor's inheritance, but that doesn't seem to be the case. This was only a single secret technique of the flowing time Great Emperor. However, I still had a huge harvest. After learning the basics of the Tao of time, Yang Kai felt that it didn't matter even if he didn't get the flowing time Great Emperor's full inheritance. As long as he persistently cultivated, one day, he could reach the heights of the flowing time Great Emperor, or even surpass him. However, before that, he needed to cultivate the Tao of space to its pinnacle. If one bit off more than he could chew, it would only be counterproductive. Yang Kai understood this truth very well. How long has it been? Yang Kai suddenly asked. He had been immersed in that repeating cycle of time, so he was unable to judge just how long had passed or tell how long he had been cultivating. It's been almost a year. Hua King Si replied. When Yang Kai came in injured, Liu Yan and Hua King Si sensed him, and since then, roughly a year had passed. A year. Yang Kai was startled. He thought that even if some time had passed, it would not exceed 2 or 3 months, but to his surprise, almost a year had gone by. In other words, in the first year after the opening of the Shattered Star Sea, he had been comprehending the mysteries of the Four Seasons beads and healing himself. It was hard to tell if he was seizing a great opportunity, or wasting one. Yang Kai had no idea how long the Shattered Star Sea would remain open, but if it only remained open for just a year, wouldn't he have wasted all his time in this place? Considering all this, Yang Kai's face blackened and an inexplicable sense of crisis gripped his heart. "I'll go out and see what's going on," Yang Kai stated before he turned around and leapt out of the sealed world bead. Since he obviously hadn't gained any benefits from the Shattered Star Sea after spending a year in the sealed world bead, Yang Kai couldn't help but feel anxious. Coming out of the sealed world bead, Yang Kai emerged on a huge asteroid. Looking around, he discovered that the surroundings weren't that different from before when he first came to the Shattered Star Sea. But what Yang Kai could say for sure was that this was definitely not the place where he first appeared. Perhaps he was hundreds of millions of kilometers away from his previous location, because this asteroid sea had been moving at a very high velocity. With a flicker, Yang Kai flew out of the asteroid sea and summoned his ship. Rumor had it that the Shattered Star Sea was filled with great opportunities for Dao Source realm cultivators, but Yang Kai had no idea what or where these opportunities were. As such, all he could do was go out and try out his luck. Over the next few days, he didn't encounter any situation worth paying attention to, but he did encounter several starry sky storms. The starry sky storms of the Shattered Star Sea were extremely terrifying, even shattering space in their wakes. Yang Kai's heart clenched at the mere sight of this, and he didn't dare to let himself be swept in these storms. He didn't encounter any cultivators. In this vast starry sky, he seemed to be the only one alive, making Yang Kai wonder whether the Shattered Star Sea had closed and everyone else had been thrown out, leaving only him here now. If that was the case, it would be horrendous. But one day, as Yang Kai happened to be flying through the void, he suddenly felt a slight hot feeling coming from the back of his hand. Raising his brow, he looked at the back of his hand. Naturally, it was coming from the 5-pointed star seal branded on his hand that was now emitting a faint glow and heat. Furthermore, he could feel a weak pull coming from a certain direction, attracting his own 5-pointed star seal. Yang Kai was puzzled, wondering what this star seal was resonating with. After pondering for a moment, he changed his direction, flying towards the source of attraction. No matter what, there was some movement there, so it would be better to take a look than to mindlessly fly around. The starry sky was vast, so even if Yang Kai flew at full speed, it took him 2 full hours before he arrived at his destination. There was a shattered cultivation star before his eyes. This cultivation star wasn't that big, but it wasn't small either, just average-sized. It was like the shattered planet that Yang Kai had seen when he had just entered the Shattered Star Sea. Over half of it had been smashed apart, leaving the other half listlessly floating in the void. By the looks of it, this derelict cultivation star was devoid of any vitality. Not even a little bit of greenery could be seen on it. Even after tens of thousands of years, this cultivation star still had a terrifying aura, something left behind in the aftermath of the decisive battle fought by the great emperors back in the past. It was particularly daunting. But that pull that was drawing Yang Kai's 5-pointed star seal was definitely coming from this shattered star. Yang Kai was surprised as he had no idea what was so special about this shattered star. He drove his boat to fly toward it and soon landed somewhere. Sweeping his gaze around, everywhere Yang Kai looked, he saw barren ground covered in countless pits of all shapes and sizes. After coming here, the 5-pointed star seal on the back of his hand glowed brighter and brighter, and Yang Kai immediately confirmed that this was the right place. Yang Kai promptly spread his divine sense to scan his surroundings, and soon he raised his brow as he shouted in joy, "Star Source." He bore the star source of Shadowed Star, and as a star master, he was naturally quite familiar with the aura of star sources. This was a shattered cultivation star, and yet it still had some of its star source energy remaining. However, perhaps because this cultivation star was horribly destroyed, its star source was also shattered and incomplete. A star source was a priceless treasure for the cultivators of the star boundary, because with one, a cultivator could better perceive world principles, making it easier for him or her to break through to the Emperor realm where principle strength comprehension was essential. However, it was very difficult for any star boundary cultivator to obtain a star source because star sources could only be given birth to by a cultivation star. As such, there were only a few such treasures in the star boundary. Even if such a treasure did appear, it would swiftly be snatched up by powerful cultivators, so it was very hard for an ordinary cultivator to even get a glimpse of one. But there was a star source here. It might be incomplete and broken, but it was still a star source. It turned out the rumors were true. There are indeed many shattered star sources in this Shattered Star Sea. If Dao Source realm cultivators could absorb these shattered sources for themselves, it would be quite helpful for breaking through to the Emperor realm in the future. Could it be that the star seal resonated with this shattered star source, and that is what led me to this place? Yang Kai guessed, but there was no one to confirm this speculation with, so he didn't know whether his guess was right or wrong. If this was the case, then the star seal was just a guide, one that could locate source strength from a distance. While Yang Kai was guessing, he suddenly turned his head and looked toward the sky as he sensed something. In the next moment, he saw two dazzling rays of light shooting down from the void, and soon after they landed beside him. When the rays of light finally dissipated, two figures entered Yang Kai's vision. Both of these two were males and seemed to be from the same sect, as their aura and robes bore a striking resemblance. Who knows how they came to the Shattered Star Sea together, but both of them were third-order Dao Source Realm masters. Furthermore, their cultivations were quite solid and vigorous, far above that of an ordinary Dao Source Realm cultivator. These two were likely the disciples of some big sect. Yang Kai noticed that the 5-pointed star seals on the back of their hands were also faintly glowing. Apparently, these two were the same as Yang Kai and had been guided here by their star seals. When Yang Kai's eyes first landed on him, he beamed with delight instead of being surprised. Because as long as there were other people here, it would mean that he wasn't alone in the Shattered Star Sea. He was just unlucky to have been stuck in healing and cultivation for all this time. For a moment, Yang Kai looked at the two with genuine happiness. The two of them had no idea what Yang Kai was excited about, but both maintained an air of arrogance and invincibility. They glanced at him once before ignoring him altogether. Instead, they spread their divine senses to scan their surroundings. One of them slightly frowned and stated, "The source strength here is so thin. It's not even as good as the one we found yesterday," the other nodded in agreement. "But it's better to have something than nothing. Many grains of sand would eventually build a tower. We can't miss it just because of a lack of quantity," the first man stated. He then glanced at Yang Kai and shouted, "What are you looking at? Why aren't you leaving yet?" The other man also sneered and added, "The Shattered Star Source here is ours. If you know what's good for you, you'd better leave, or else you won't be able to leave no matter how much you want." The two sang a chorus, and their threatening meaning couldn't be any more obvious. Yang Kai, who was listening to this, turned livid in anger. 2433, Showcasing One's Ability. Published by Divine Dao Library. Translator, Salavan and Ashish. Translation checker, Pew Pew Lasergun. Editor and proofreader, Leo of Zion Mountain and Dale Ligerkeys. The source strength here was truly meager, and Yang Kai didn't even attach too much attention to it. After all, he already had the complete source strength of Shadowed Star, but when these two yelled at him in such an arrogant manner, it was only natural to become annoyed. After thinking about it though, Yang Kai didn't lash out and instead cupped his fists and asked, "Friends, I want to ask you something. I wonder if you can answer my questions." The person who spoke first took a sideways glance at Yang Kai as he asked with a cold snort, "What do you want to know?" Yang Kai promptly asked, "Did you come here because of the reaction between your star seals and the source strength here?" The man glanced at Yang Kai in surprise as he sneered, "Didn't you as well?" Yang Kai curled his lips into a smile and replied, "Naturally." So, it turned out that the star seal really could sense star sources. Although Yang Kai had guessed this before, he wasn't too sure about it as there was no one to confirm his hypothesis with. Now, after listening to the opposite party, Yang Kai understood. The star seal on the back of his hand wasn't just a pass to enter the Shattered Star Sea, but it also seems to have other magnificent functions too. The man angrily rebuked, "If that's the case, why did you knowingly ask?" "How odd." Yang Kai replied, laughing lightly, "I just casually asked. Friend, why harbor such anger? Being so enraged only hurts you in the end. Friend, do you know how long the Shattered Star Sea stays open for?" As soon as he asked this, the two looked at Yang Kai with strange expressions on their faces. They seemed to have gotten the gist of the matter though, and one of them stated, "It looks like you don't know anything about the situation here." Yang Kai turned serious and humbly asked, cupping his fist, "Friend, please give me advice." He really didn't know anything about the Shattered Star Sea, and hiding it wouldn't do him any good. He might find some information by exploring on his own, but it would be faster to just ask others. Although these two didn't seem to be good and honest people, it didn't prevent Yang Kai from asking them. The other man broke into laughter as he mocked, "Senior brother, someone has actually come to the Shattered Star Sea without knowing anything. Has your master, or sect, or elders not taught you anything?" He appeared to be extremely happy as if he had heard some big joke. Yang Kai stated with a cold look on his face, "I don't have a master, a sect, or elders for that matter. Is it very funny?" The man restrained his smile and explained himself, "It's not very funny, but for someone who doesn't have a master, a sect, or any elder to come here is really surprising." "Friend, you still haven't answered my question," Yang Kai urged. "What would we gain by answering you?" the other party asked back with a cold snort. Yang Kai replied, "How about I give the star source here?" Yang Kai paused before continuing, "I came here first, and as long as you two can answer my question, I will immediately leave. You two can decide who among you will take the star source. I won't interfere." The junior brother angrily rebuked, "Who would dare to snatch the star source that we two brothers have eyed? Why do we need your useless favor?" The senior brother, on the other hand, waved his hand and stated, "Friend, since you're so easy to talk to, it would be impolite to refuse you." The junior brother spat in disdain upon hearing this, looking quite unhappy. The senior brother continued, "No one knows when the Shattered Star Sea will close after it opens, as the duration of its opening isn't fixed. According to the ancient books, the duration of each opening of the Shattered Star Sea varies from as short as 2 years to as long as 10 years. And there are no signs of when it closes. Once the sealed world is closed, all the cultivators here will be expelled, no matter where you are. Friend, is this answer to your satisfaction?" "There is no fixed period." Yang Kai was a little surprised. However, it wasn't the first time he was encountering this kind of thing, so he simply accepted this explanation. But according to this man, the Shattered Star Sea would remain open for a minimum of 2 years each time. In other words, he still had at least 1 year to make up for lost time. After being silent for a while, Yang Kai cupped his fists. "Many thanks. Goodbye." Even though he still had a lot of questions he wanted to ask, these two were far from generous, so if he continued to question him, they might not tell him the truth. Instead of being misled by them, it was better to explore the Shattered Star Sea on his own or wait to run into an acquaintance. Having said his thanks, Yang Kai turned and flew off. But the moment he turned around, the eyes of the senior brother, who had just answered Yang Kai's question, suddenly flickered with a shrewd gleam as a jet-black beam flew out of his hand with the flick of his wrist. In the lightning-fast moment, the beam was already behind Yang Kai. It seemed that Yang Kai would be pierced by the black beam at any moment, but at the critical moment, he suddenly twisted his body, avoiding the black beam. The next moment, Yang Kai stood in the midair and indifferently asked, coldly glaring down at the two, "What is your meaning?" The senior brother was taken aback and he couldn't help but murmur, "He actually dodged that. How is that possible?" His sneak attack had no warning signs, and neither had he shown the slightest bit of murderous intent before he made the move. It was reasonable to say that it was impossible for Yang Kai to perceive this strike, but that was exactly what happened at the critical moment. "This guy isn't an easy mark," the senior brother thought to himself. His junior brother, on the other hand, didn't take Yang Kai that seriously and immediately sneered, "Isn't it clear what our intentions are? Why ask when you know them clearly? You two want to kill me?" Yang Kai raised his brow and sorrowfully spoke, "You and I ran into each other by chance, and we have neither grievance nor grudge. You two were interested in the star source here and I offered it freely to you. I had no intention of fighting with you, but you two still wish to kill me using underhanded means. Your conduct truly saddens me. Even the most basic trust between people has been broken." The corner of the senior brother's lips twitched as he stated, "If you don't want to die, you can leave your right hand and then scram." The junior brother nodded in agreement, "That's right. If you want to survive, you can cut off your right hand. My fellow brother and I will spare your life if you do, otherwise, next year today will be your death anniversary." Yang Kai frowned and asked, "Why do you want my right hand? Don't you have yours?" The junior brother sneered and stated, "Do you think your right hand is a treasure or something? We don't want your right hand. What we want is the star seal on the back of your hand. We have already entered the Shattered Star Sea. Why do you want to steal my star seal?" Yang Kai was still confused. "You really don't know anything." The junior brother broke into laughter. "My fellow brother and I will be generous and give you a final piece of free advice. It's very common to snatch other people's star seal in this Shattered Star Sea. As for the reasons and benefits, hey, you will come to know about it later." The senior brother's face sank before he spoke, "Friend, since you can avoid my attack, I assume you have some impressive skill, but do you think that you can defeat me and my junior brother together? If you don't want to die, obediently cooperate. Otherwise, we will kill you and take away your star seal afterwards." Yang Kai touched his chin and indifferently stated, "You are really making me curious. What is so good about snatching someone else's star seal? You have made me curious to the point that I want to kill you too." Kill us? The junior brother's eyes widened after hearing this, but immediately after, he burst into laughter as he pointed at Yang Kai and asked, "Senior brother, did you hear what he just said? He actually said that he wants to kill us. This guy must be out of his mind." The senior brother coldly snorted and said, "Friend, since you refuse a toast, you must drink at a loss. We don't need to be polite to him, attack together." Just as he spoke, the junior brother's laughter disappeared as a ruthless look appeared on his face. Immediately after, the two pushed their source chi, preparing to attack. Yang Kai, on the other hand, formed a set of hand seals as a strange and inexplicable energy fluctuation appeared around him, instantly covering the two brothers. The two, who were just about to attack, inexplicably quivered as a sense of crisis gripped their hearts. They seemed to hear the call of death and their clothes instantly became drenched in a cold sweat. They wanted to look up to see what kind of profound secret technique Yang Kai had used, but what took them aback was the fact that their thoughts seemed to have frozen. They couldn't even move their bodies now, and more importantly, everything around them was strangely calm and quiet. It was almost as if time itself had stopped flowing, freezing the world in this exact moment. A low murmur suddenly rang in their ears, causing them to shiver like they had been sunk into a blizzard. Time flows on infinitely, like a mighty stream, like an unending dream, time flies seal. Just as these words fell, Yang Kai pushed his palms towards his opponents from where he stood and a mysterious seal shot out, striking them before they could even react. Two muffled groans rang out at the same time as flowing time force madly invaded the two brothers' bodies, causing their vitality to completely escape in a very short time. With a speed visible to the naked eye, the black hair of the two men turned gray and then fell out. Even their skin began to wrinkle and their healthy and strong physiques grew old and skinny in just 10 breaths. Their footing looked unsteady and they seemed almost incapable of standing upright any longer. Hundreds or even thousands of years seemed to have passed, leaving only the deep scars of time on their bodies. The strangest thing was the two still maintained their sluggish posture, seemingly unaware of their own changes. Their eyes were completely hollow. Finally, at some point, the two suddenly recovered and collapsed together. Senior brother. The handsome-looking junior brother looked no different from an old man who had one foot in the grave now, and his eyes sank as he looked at his senior brother, who barely resembled his past self, in horror. A quavering voice escaped from his mouth that had no teeth remaining as he asked, "How did you become like this?" "Junior brother, you." The senior brother was also horrified and stared back at his junior brother with the same shocked look on his face. The junior brother finally seemed to have realized what happened and touched his face while staring at the wrinkled and withered hands before his eyes. He looked at them in a daze before screaming in horror. What did you do to us?" The senior brother raised his head with difficulty and looked towards the sky, his turbid eyes filled with horror and despair. He had never seen or even heard of such a strange secret technique. In just one move, he and his junior brother had been defeated like this without even being able to fight back. He had never seen a Dao Source Realm cultivator as powerful as Yang Kai in his entire life. Chapter 2434, Starseal Fusion. Published by Divine Dao Library. Translator, Salavan and Ashish. Translation checker, Pew Pew Laser Gun. Editor and proofreader, Leo of Zion Mountain and Dale Ligerkeys. Yang Kai sneered and sarcastically spoke while treading down from the void, "Two wastes, you can die without regret under the divine ability of the Flowing Time Great Emperor." Flowing Time, Great Emperor. The senior brother had obviously heard of the Flowing Time Great Emperor and his eyes widened in horror upon hearing this. His throat wheezed heavily as he tried to breathe in, but after inhaling sharply, his head slumped over to one side and he perished. Although the junior brother did not immediately die, he did not fare any better. He was now on the verge of death, his aura extremely weak. At this time, unless there was a treasure with strong vitality restoration properties, such as the immortal source liquid from the immortal tree, he would undoubtedly die. A deep regret flashed past his lifeless eyes. Had they known that Yang Kai was so powerful, they would never have provoked such a star of calamity. Very soon, the junior brother's aura ceased to exist as well, his eyes wide open as if he died with everlasting regret. The next moment, two swishing sounds came as two streaks of light suddenly shot out. Yang Kai saw this clearly. The two streaking beams of light were the 5-pointed star seals on the backs of the two dead brothers' hands. Yang Kai had seen the very same scene once before, back in the Four Seasons realm, when he had killed someone with a star seal. Their star seal had also flown out in a very similar manner after their death. After the two 5-pointed star seals flew out, they didn't leave too far. Instead, they flew around Yang Kai a few times, as if they were being drawn by something before they shot straight into the back of his hand. Yang Kai only felt a slight heat on the back of his hand, and when he took a closer look, the original 5-pointed star seal on the back of his hand seemed to have undergone some changes, becoming slightly more defined. He was taken aback as he had no idea why the star seal of those two had merged with his. Just when he was confused, the 5-pointed star seal on the back of his hand suddenly burst with a dazzling flash, transforming into a cloud of starlight. Yang Kai was dumbfounded. Previously, the two brothers wanted to rob his star seal, so he originally thought that stealing someone else's star seal would provide some great benefits, but the current situation had caught him by surprise. My own star seal fused with theirs and exploded. How was this good? Although Yang Kai was already inside the shattered star sea and the star seal had lost its significance as an entry pass, it could still sense the location of source strength. Without a star seal, how was Yang Kai to find source strength in this vast shattered star sea? Had he known this would happen, he would have never let others' star seals merge with his own. Yang Kai's heart was bleeding. But right then, something strange happened. The starlight that had just burst apart flowed back towards the back of Yang Kai's hand, and a scorching hot pain immediately followed before another brand new star seal appeared. 6-pointed. Yang Kai couldn't help but cry out in shock. He simply couldn't believe his eyes. After the 5-pointed star seal on the back of his hand exploded, the starlight reconverged and formed a 6-pointed star seal. The sudden changes in mood in this short period of time had brought Yang Kai to a standstill. He quietly sensed for a moment and found that after the emergence of the 6-pointed star seal, his ability to sense the shattered source of this shattered star had strengthened a little. It was more obvious than with his previous 5-pointed star seal. Could it be that the higher the grade of star seal, the easier it is to sense source strength? A bold guess suddenly started to take root in Yang Kai's mind. Although this speculation hadn't been verified yet, from his experiences it seemed quite credible. Yang Kai recalled the 7-star seals he had obtained in the Four Seasons realm. Among those star seals, there were 3-pointed star seals, 4-pointed star seals, and 1 5-pointed star seal. Back then, Princess Lan Xun of Star Soul Palace had told him that the higher the grade of star seal, the easier it was to obtain benefits from the shattered star sea. The elders of Azure Sun Temple seemed to have mentioned this as well. It was just that no one had given him a detailed explanation. Now, after giving it a second thought, being easier to gain benefits probably referred to the ability to sense source strength in this place. The higher the grade of the star seal, the easier it was to sense star sources from further away. Now his star seal had advanced to a 6-pointed star seal, which was definitely better than the 5-pointed star seal. Lan Xun had also said that on top of the 6-pointed star seal, there were 7-pointed, 8-pointed, and even the most advanced 9-pointed star seal. As far as Yang Kai knew, the highest grade star seal obtained by those cultivators in the Four Seasons realm was only 5-pointed. He was still wondering how there would be higher grade star seals, but now it seemed that they weren't obtained naturally, but were upgraded step by step. One had to kill enemies and obtain their star seals to merge with their own star seal. Once it reached a certain accumulation, the star seal would explode and reorganize itself into a higher grade star seal. His 6-pointed star seal was the best proof of this. The two people he had just killed now, both had 5-pointed star seals, and he too had a 5-pointed star seal. 3 5-pointed star seals had merged to upgrade to a 6-pointed star seal. In other words, if he could get 2 or more 6-pointed star seals, Yang Kai could upgrade his to a 7-pointed star seal, and so on and so forth. If he carried on like this, he would eventually obtain the highest grade 9-pointed star seal. Once he had a 9-pointed star seal, he would be able to sense star sources from very far away, no longer having to aimlessly search for them in this endless void. This experience made Yang Kai realize many mysteries of the shattered star sea and star seals. No wonder those two wanted to snatch my star seal, it turns out that there was such a reason behind it. Realization suddenly dawned upon Yang Kai. However, it was definitely not an easy task to upgrade one's star seal to a 9-pointed star seal. Just the number of star seals one needed to snatch were extraordinary, and Yang Kai wasn't belligerent and bloodthirsty, so he didn't hold too many expectations in his heart. If the 6-pointed star seal could be used, why bother to pursue the most advanced 9-pointed star seal? Yang Kai, standing in the same place, pondered for a long time before he dispelled such thoughts and bent over, picking up the space rings of the two. However, when he touched the two corpses, they suddenly shattered into dust. Yang Kai was secretly taken aback at the sight of this. He had just comprehended the time flies seal recently, so although he knew that this divine ability was extremely powerful, because he hadn't used it before, he wasn't too sure about its effects and had simply been experimenting just now. But much to his surprise, the two cultivators of the same level were reduced to dust by the flowing time force with just one move, completely powerless to resist it. Apparently, the might of this divine ability had exceeded Yang Kai's expectations. It was worthy of being one of the flowing time great emperor's techniques. It wasn't surprising that it was so powerful. And along with the enhancement of Yang Kai's strength, his comprehension of this divine ability would deepen, further increasing its might. In the future, it would definitely become one of his trump cards, on par with his space divine abilities. As Yang Kai took a quick scan of the rings of these two cultivators with his divine sense, he couldn't help but coldly snort because he discovered that there were many things in their space rings that didn't belong to these two, including some female undergarments. Obviously, these two had killed and robbed a lot of people already. Maybe during the 1 year since the Shattered Star Sea opened, these two had constantly been killing others and snatching their treasures and star seals. No wonder they both had the 5-pointed star seals. Presumably, their star seals had also been upgraded several times. Who knows how many people they had killed using underhanded methods. Yang Kai threw the 2 rings into the sealed world bead, letting his embodiment sort out the contents for him. He was the only one left here, so although the star source of this shattered star was relatively incomplete, it was still a star source. Naturally, Yang Kai had no reason to let it go. After thinking about it for a moment though, he waved his hand and Hua King Si suddenly appeared in front of him. Just as she appeared, her beautiful eyes flickered with surprise before she excitedly exclaimed, "Young master, isn't this the Shattered Star Sea?" Sister Hua is indeed knowledgeable. This is indeed the Shattered Star Sea. Yang Kai slightly smiled, paying close attention to Hua King Si's movements while they spoke. Hua King Si said in a trembling voice, "It's really the Shattered Star Sea. Every Dao Source Realm cultivator dreams of coming here. If one can obtain some opportunity here, he or she will definitely advance to the Emperor Realm." While speaking, she glanced at Yang Kai. "Why are you staring at me like this?" Yang Kai asked, "Do you not feel any discomfort, like the world is rejecting you?" Hua King Si was taken aback. However, she soon understood what Yang Kai was implying and replied with a slight smile, "Since you brought me in, then whether I have a star seal or not, I can continue to stay here. Were you worried I would be teleported out because I don't have a star seal?" Yang Kai nodded. Hua King Si stated, waving her hand lightly, "You don't need to worry about this. Many cultivators have their star seals robbed in the Shattered Star Sea, yet they can remain here." Hearing this, Yang Kai suddenly smacked his head and scolded himself for being so stupid. If he wanted to inquire about the Shattered Star Sea, he could have just asked Hua King Si. Regardless of her current position, she was still a disciple of Star Soul Palace and certainly knew much more than others. Since he hadn't recently let her out, he had forgotten about her. But after confirming that she could stay in the Shattered Star Sea even without a star seal, Yang Kai let Lu Yan and Zhang Ruoxi out with a wave of his hand. Zhang Ruoxi seldom left the sealed world bead, except when she was breaking through to a new great realm, so seeing Yang Kai summon her out, she couldn't help but look at him curiously, wondering what he wanted her to do. This is the Shattered Star Sea, a grand event that all the elite Dao Source Realm cultivators of the Star Boundary participate in. It is a huge opportunity. Sister Hua, tell us, what do we need to pay attention to here? Hua King Si nodded, sorting out her thoughts before she recounted everything she knew. Most of the information she told everyone was what Yang Kai had already speculated, including the specific use of and how to upgrade star seals. However, Hua King Si's information was more comprehensive and complete. According to her, higher-level star seals could not only sense the location of distant star sources, but could also sense the location of other lower-grade star seals. 2435, Star Refining Arts Power. Published by Divine Dao Library. Translator, Salavan and Ashish. Translation checker, Pew Pew Laser Gun. Editor and proofreader, Leo of Zion Mountain and Dale Ligerkeys. In other words, the owner of a higher-grade star seal could detect the locations of those with lower-grade star seals even from a long distance. If one's grade of star seal was worse than the opposite party's star seal, they would be found out no matter what kind of concealment technique they used. This feature of the star seal made the Shattered Star Sea a bloodbath every time it opened. In order to upgrade one's star seal, many cultivators did not hesitate to kill others. This feature of the star seal was quite sobering, causing Yang Kai's face to turn serious upon hearing it. He hadn't paid much attention to the level of his starseal before. Obviously, this grade of starseal was sufficient for him. There wasn't any need to pursue a higher grade, but now, after listening to Hua Qin-si, Yang Kai realized that in order to ensure his own safety, his grade of the starseal had to be high enough, otherwise someone would very likely learn his location and come find trouble with him. This feature secretly promoted killing and snatching between cultivators. It forced all the cultivators in the Shattered Star Sea to find ways to increase the grade of their respective starseal, whether they wanted to or not. The benefits of the starseal are roughly these. However, I have also heard of another legend. While speaking, Hua Qin-si's face suddenly turned serious. Zhang Ruoxi nervously asked, "What?" Hua Qin-si replied, gazing at Yang Kai, "Rumor has it that if you can obtain the highest grade 9-pointed starseal, it can guide you to the location of the heaven-devouring Great Emperor's inheritance." Really? Yang Kai looked surprised. Hua Qin-si pursed her lips and answered, smiling, "This legend has been going around since the Shattered Star Sea was formed, but whether it is true or false, no one has been able to confirm. Naturally, there is no way to verify it." She paused for a moment before continuing, "But this shouldn't be appealing to you, young Master Yang." His embodiment was cultivating the heaven-devouring battle law, which happened to be the key component to the heaven-devouring Great Emperor's inheritance, so naturally Yang Kai had no need to pursue this vague opportunity. "It's not that attractive to me, but it's different for others." Yang Kai's face stiffened slightly, suddenly realizing that starseals in the Shattered Star Sea were like double-edged swords, a source of conflict and avarice. It was of great help to the cultivators here, but because of its various features, it also led to bloody slaughter among the cultivators. Had there been no such thing as starseals, the chances of conflict among the cultivators here would have been much smaller. Of course, not everyone is looking for the inheritance of the heaven-devouring Great Emperor. In the Shattered Star Sea, there are other treasures left by other great emperors. These are what generations of cultivators yearn for. I heard that 5 millennia ago, someone found the indestructible Cyan Lotus of Cyan Lotus Great Emperor in the Shattered Star Sea, allowing them to inherit the mantle of Cyan Lotus Great Emperor. "And how is that person doing now?" Liu Yan indifferently asked. Hua Qin-si replied, "He created a top sect that's renowned in the Eastern Territory, the Cyan Lotus Palace. That person is also the Palace Master of Cyan Lotus Palace. He is quite lucky." Yang Kai raised his brow slightly. "Luck is an opportunity. Who hasn't cultivated without relying on opportunity?" Hua Qin-si stated frankly. Yang Kai agreed. Every cultivator needed great opportunities in order to cultivate to the Dao Source realm, and if their opportunities continued, they might even take a step further and explore the mysteries of the Emperor realm. If one's opportunities were insufficient, however, they could remain stuck in the Dao Source realm forever. "Okay, let's not talk about this. There is an incomplete star source here. Let's refine it together," Yang Kai stated. Originally, the star source was supposed to be hidden somewhere inside the cultivation star and just finding it would require a lot of effort, but now, this cultivation star had been broken and the shattered star source strength was leaking out. There was no need to look for it now and it could be refined at will. When Hua Qin-si and the others heard this, they nodded and found a place to sit cross-legged, circulating their secret arts. The same was true for Yang Kai. Even though he wasn't that interested in the source strength here, the early bird takes the worm and many grains of sand would eventually build a tower. A change in quantity would always lead to a qualitative change. Source strength was a very special type of energy. Refining and absorbing it would not increase the strength of a cultivator directly, but it could bring great benefits to any cultivator. This was especially true for Hua Qin-si and the others who had never refined a star source before. If they could gain some source strength here in the Shattered Star Sea, it would definitely help them reach the Emperor realm. Time slowly trickled by as the four sat cross-legged not far away from each other. After half a day, Yang Kai couldn't help but frown. He discovered that the efficiency of refining and absorbing source strength like this was simply too low. Even after tirelessly trying for half a day, the four hadn't absorbed much of the source strength here. If they kept it like this, they would need 10 days to half a month to completely refine the shattered star source here. If it was taking this long even when the four of them were cooperating, just how long would it take for a single person? A month? 2 months? This was a troublesome situation. Yang Kai quietly observed Hua Qin-si and the others, and found that they were in the same position as himself. Only Zhang Ruoxi seemed to be refining and absorbing the source strength at a faster speed. Who knows whether it was related to her bloodline or not, however, even her speed was very limited. I wonder, if I threw the embodiment here and let him use the heaven-devouring battle law, how effective would it be? The heaven-devour battle law can devour everything in the world, so source strength should definitely not be an exception. Thinking about it, Yang Kai's eyes suddenly lit up. Just like the embodiment had the heaven-devouring battle law, he too had another secret technique which was designed to refine star sources. The star refining art. This secret technique was obtained when he explored the Emperor Garden on Shadowed Star. It was one of Yang Yan's secret techniques, and it was also thanks to this technique that Yang Kai could refine Shadowed Star's star source and become its star master. Later, he passed on the star refining art to little senior sister Chia Ning Chang, who then successfully refined the star source of Tong Xuan realm. It was quite evident that the star refining art was a secret technique dedicated to refining star sources, so wasn't it perfect for this place? Yang Kai suddenly became excited, and without hesitating for another moment, he promptly began circulating the star refining art. In the beginning, nothing worth mentioning happened around him, but as time passed, the source strength swarmed toward him like cats that had gotten the whiff of fresh fish, waiting to be refined and absorbed by him. After a while, specks of starlight appeared around Yang Kai, as if he was surrounded by large swaths of fireflies. These specks of starlight were filled with a tremendous amount of source strength, the physical manifestation of the shattered star source. Yang Kai's body had turned into a bottomless pit, welcoming all of this energy. He opened his body and mind to accept the countless specks of starlight. For a moment, the entire process painted a spectacular and extremely dazzling picture. Hua King Si and the others were all startled and opened their eyes and stared at Yang Kai in surprise. After this, even Zhang Ruoshi was unable to absorb any more source strength, as all of it had been drawn to Yang Kai, depriving everyone else of any benefits. After some unknown amount of time, the specks of starlight around Yang Kai gradually became thinner and then disappeared. Realizing that there was no more source strength here, Yang Kai slowly opened his eyes, a satisfied look on his face. But immediately, he noticed 3 pairs of beautiful eyes grudgingly glaring at him, as if Yang Kai had abandoned them. Yang Kai, wiping the sweat off his forehead, embarrassingly stating, "I was doing an experiment. I didn't expect it to be this effective." Although he had been focusing on refining the source strength here, he knew what was going around him. He also knew why Hua King Si and the others were looking at him with accusatory gazes. Hua King Si spoke, "Young master, what kind of mysterious technique were you using? It only took you half a day to absorb the shattered star source here." The star refining art, Yang Kai beckoned and stated, "Come, I will teach it to you. This secret technique is tailor-made for this place." The 3 girls' eyes instantly lit up after hearing this, and they hurriedly came to Yang Kai and sat down cross-legged, earnestly looking at him. Yang Kai immediately began to teach them, hiding nothing. The 3 girls listened to him with rapt attention. Each of their aptitudes was quite good, so they mastered this new technique in just 2 days. After they had mastered the star refining art, Yang Kai finally set off again, flying through the cold and empty starry sky. With the star refining art, he felt that he could make up for the loss of 1 year easily. After all, the time it would take others to refine shattered star sources couldn't be compared with the time he took, making his efficiency much higher than others. After 5 days, Yang Kai found another cultivation star with a shattered source through his star seal. He flew to it with Hua King Si and the others, then within half a day, the source strength here was completely absorbed. It was the first time Hua King Si and the others had absorbed star source so efficiently, so they were left wanting more. Over the next month, Yang Kai continued to explore the starry sky, finding shattered star sources several times. This 1 month of wandering had made Yang Kai deeply appreciate the mystical effects of his star seal. Often, at a very far distance, Yang Kai could sense the presence of others whose grade of star seal was obviously lower than his own, making it impossible for them to hide their presence. Yang Kai didn't bother these people though, as he focused on searching for more source strength. After another month, all 4 of them had a good harvest. But today, after absorbing the shattered star source of a certain cultivation star, Hua King Si suddenly approached Yang Kai, seemingly wanting to say something. Yang Kai looked at her with a weird gaze and asked, "What's the matter, Sister Hua?" Hua King Si replied, "Young master, I want to act alone." Yang Kai was taken aback, frowning as he asked, "Is it because the source strength is too little for 4? Hua King Si shook her head and stated, "No, it's not that. It's just..." She turned her head and looked toward the pitch-black void. Her beautiful eyes flickered with a strange gleam. "I can feel it. There is something in this shattered star sea that can help me take that last step. There is an opportunity waiting for me somewhere. I want to search for it. Hua King C was already a peak Dao Source Realm master, only one step away from the Emperor Realm. Since she was feeling like this at this critical juncture, it was very likely that there was a real opportunity out there for her. A sudden epiphany was often more useful than entering secluded retreat for 10 or 20 years. Chapter 2436, Separating. Published by Divine Tao Library. Translator, Salavan and Ashish. Translation checker, Pew Pew Laser Gun. Editor and proofreader, Leo of Zion Mountain and Dale Ligerkeys. Considering all this, Yang Kai didn't have any intention to stop her. Perhaps by letting Hua King C act alone, she might have a surprising harvest. Furthermore, Hua King C was strong, and she had the 5-colored spear Emperor artifact. This Emperor artifact was formerly owned by Yao Changjun and had already been refined by Hua King Chi now, boosting her strength greatly. Ordinary cultivators would not be her opponent. What Hua King C was lacking now was just a star seal. Without a star seal, she would not be able to sense the location of star sources and would only be able to search aimlessly. Take this, Yang Kai reached out and gave her a space ring. Hua King C took it and checked out its contents with her divine sense. The next moment, she cried out in surprise, so many source crystals. Everything in the ring was basically source crystals. There were roughly 200 to 300 million source crystals, many of which were high rank. In addition to the source crystals, there were various pills personally refined by Yang Kai. If you really manage to obtain an opportunity to break through to the Emperor Realm here, these source crystals will be a necessity. The world energy in the Shattered Star Sea is very thin, so don't reject this, Yang Kai earnestly urged her. Hua King C tightly gripped the space ring and nodded, many thanks, young Master Yang. You really care about me the most in this world. She might have been forced to follow Yang Kai in the beginning and was even locked in the sealed world bead by him for a time, but Yang Kai hadn't put her at any disadvantage over these years. Not only that, but she also received an extraordinary treasure pill, that everyone dreamed of but could never obtain, which allowed her to lay a solid foundation and clear path to the Emperor Realm. She also received the 5-colored spear Emperor artifact from Yang Kai. Now, Yang Kai had given her 300 million source crystals all at once. In this world, no one other than him had treated her so well and given her so many treasures. Whether it was the extraordinary treasure pill or the 5-colored spear, they were the treasures that could cause countless masters to fight over. Even her own master back in Star Soul Palace had not been this good to her. Hua King C was truly moved. If she could really break through to the Emperor Realm in the future, she would have to thank Yang Kai the most. She mentioned sensing an opportunity just now, but in her heart, she thought that meeting Yang Kai was the biggest opportunity of her life. Sister Hua, there's no need to be polite. Yang Kai smiled. Suddenly, he remembered something and said, don't move. Saying so, he suddenly stretched his finger out toward Hua King C's forehead. Hua King C didn't know what he was planning to do, but she didn't take any defensive stance at all, simply standing still and waiting. Yang Kai pointed his finger at her forehead, and in the next moment, Hua King C's tender figure trembled. She felt as if some invisible shackle had been lifted, allowing her mind and body to completely relax. She instantly understood what Yang Kai had done. To her surprise, Yang Kai had returned her soul brand to her knowledge sea. Back then, when she was locked in the sealed world bead by Yang Kai, she had been forced to open her knowledge sea and allow Yang Kai to take her soul brand. From then on, she was no longer able to resist Yang Kai and had to unconditionally obey him. But now, Yang Kai had returned her soul brand to her of his own volition. In other words, she was now free, no longer bound to Yang Kai. Young Master Yang, Hua King Si's pretty eyes quivered as she looked at him with disbelief. Yang Kai smiled and stated, if one wants to break through to the Emperor realm, they should have nothing hindering or distracting them. Hua King Si pursed her lips into a smile before she suddenly placed her hand over her heart and swore, young master, rest assured, Sister Hua will not reveal any of your secrets in this lifetime. If I ever violate this oath, let the heavens cause dissonance in my cultivation and condemn me to death. She knew too many of Yang Kai's secrets. Whether it was the sealed world bead or Yang Kai's various trump cards, or the immortal tree and the firmament tree planted in the medicine garden, if word of any one of these treasures got out, it would be impossible for Yang Kai to gain a foothold in the star boundary again. He would be hunted down no matter where he went. She took the initiative to swear such an oath, planting a heart demon on herself, all to assure Yang Kai that his secrets would not be leaked. Yang Kai stated with a smile, if I didn't believe you, I wouldn't have returned your soul brand. Sister Hua, act freely but be careful on your way. Hua King Si nodded before asking, if the Shattered Star Sea closes, how can I find you? If you want to find me, you can go to the Thousand Leaves sect. Someday I will visit Thousand Leaves sect. Chi Yue, Io and the others were in Thousand Leaves sect, so Yang Kai would eventually go there to reunite with them. Alright, I'll go there and wait for you. Hua King Si nodded and walked forward, saying a few words to Lu Yang and Zhang Ruoxi before her tender figure flew towards the starry sky, disappearing into the darkness. Looking in the direction she left, Yang Kai heaved a slight sigh. Over the past few years, Hua King Si had helped him a lot. When he had imprisoned Hua King Si, there wasn't any malicious intent behind it, she had simply seen too many of his secrets for him to let her go at the time. He had always planned on returning her freedom to her once she broke through to the Emperor realm, now he had just done it a bit earlier. After having been with her for such a long time, Yang Kai felt that Hua King Si was trustworthy, so even if she had not made such an oath, he wouldn't have worried about it. Sir, a weak shout came from nearby, and Yang Kai felt someone tugging his sleeve. Looking down, he saw it was none other than Zhang Ruoxi. She was gazing at him with an expectant look on her face. He skeptically asked, what's wrong? Sir, Zhang Ruoxi hesitated, stuttering and repeating herself. Yang Kai, furrowing his brow, asked, you wouldn't happen to be thinking of acting alone as well, would you? He had noticed that Zhang Ruoxi was somewhat anxious and excited, so he had this guess. What he didn't expect was that Zhang Ruoxi would nod in agreement. Yang Kai was greatly shocked, are you sure? Zhang Ruoxi bit her cherry-red lips, then took a deep breath as if she was summoning her courage before she spoke. Since Ruoxi left the Zhang family, Ruoxi has been cultivating under the shelter of Sir's wings. Although Ruoxi can be considered to have achieved some success, old ancestor once told me that flowers that do not withstand the wind and rain do not grow strong. Ruoxi does not want to be a drag on Sir. Ruoxi wants to become stronger too. So, Ruoxi wants to try. Yang Kai's face turned serious as he asked, do you know how dangerous this will be? Zhang Ruoxi hesitated before gently nodding. Yang Kai added, then you know who the people who have entered here are, yes. You have a naturally kind and simple personality. You haven't seen how treacherous the world is, are you sure you can survive here? Ruoxi will try her best. Yang Kai blankly stared at her, seeming to have seen another side of Zhang Ruoxi for the first time. The weak-looking girl seemed a lot stronger now. Master, let me go with her, Lu Yan suddenly interrupted. If I and Ruoxi are together, we can take care of each other. Moreover, I still have Co Bai, so there shouldn't be any danger. Yang Kai glanced at Lu Yan and seeing her nod at him, he finally relented, Lu Yan will go with you. Will that be a problem? Zhang Ruoxi cried in joy, that would be the best. Yang Kai appeared to have become emotional as he spoke, since your wings have grown, then fly as you wish. When he first brought Zhang Ruoxi with him, she was just a first-order origin returning realm child, but over the years, she had slowly advanced to the Dao Source realm. If someone from Zhang family knew about this, they would surely be joyful. The Zhang family hadn't had a Dao Source realm master in many years. Now, the strongest person in the Zhang family was the old ancestor who was just a second-order origin king. Such strength was basically insignificant in this world. If Zhang Ruoxi was allowed to move alone, Yang Kai would not have been able to relax. She might just be eager to try out how strong she currently was and was following Hua King Si's example, but she was still just a first-order Dao Source realm cultivator, and even if she had her special bloodline power, someone with her cultivation and with no experience in fighting would be in danger here. She might encounter a crisis that she couldn't deal with. But if Lu Yan was with her, there would be no problem. Not to mention Lu Yan having a heaven-grade puppet with her, Co Bai, her personal strength was at the peak of the Dao Source realm. Furthermore, Lu Yan had the Annihilation Thunder bead with her. What's more, although Zhang Ruoxi was a little weaker, she was wearing the Pink Cloud's Phoenix robe. As long as the two were cautious, they wouldn't be in any danger. Hearing Yang Kai's words, Zhang Ruoxi waved her hands in horror and explained herself, "Sir, you are misunderstanding, Ruoxi didn't mean it like that." Lu Yan comforted her, "Don't mind it. Master was just casually speaking." Yang Kai handed Lu Yan a space ring and instructed, "Take these, they are the same as Sister Hua's. When the Shattered Star Sea closes in the future, if we haven't met up by then, go to the Thousands Leaves sect and wait for me there." Lu Yan took the space ring and answered with a nod, "I will remember." "Go on then." Yang Kai waved him off. Zhang Ruoxi pursed her cherry-red lips before she approached Yang Kai and knelt down, kowtowing as she declared, "Ruoxi will forever remember Sir's kindness. Sir, you must remain safe. Ruoxi will take care of you in the future. Get up, this is not a life and death parting. We will meet another day." Yang Kai bent over and helped her up. "Let's go," said Lu Yan, grabbing Zhang Ruoxi's tender hand and pushing her source chi before flying towards the starry sky with her. After a while, the two disappeared from sight. "Everyone is gone," Yang Kai murmured as he stood there, feeling some slight melancholy. Although he had wandered alone for many years now, he never felt too lonely because there was life in the sealed world bead. This time though, Hua King Si, Lu Yan, and Zhang Ruoxi had all left, making him feel a little uncomfortable, like something was missing from his side. However, he also knew that although it was safer for everyone to stick together, the harvest was also significantly smaller. Now that he had taught them the star refining art, if they acted alone, their gains would be greater. Perhaps this was a part of the reason they wanted to leave. They didn't want to drag him down and share his harvest. Just as Yang Kai was in a daze, he suddenly realized that the embodiment was calling him. He quickly sent a part of his consciousness into the sealed world bead and connected with the embodiment. "You're not thinking of acting alone too, are you?" Although the base of the embodiment's sentience was his soul clone, along with the rise in its strength, the soul clone had fused completely with the stone puppet body. Now, the embodiment could be considered a unique existence. It couldn't be merely regarded as Yang Kai's soul clone. It had its own thoughts and ideas. Of course, if the two were willing, they could still communicate with each other and share all their thoughts and memories. Even if they did not converse, they could still guess what the other was thinking. To 2437, Netherworld Sects Yu Ying. Published by Divine Dao Library. Translator, Salavan and Ashish. Translation checker, Pew Pew Lasergun. Editor and proofreader, Leo of Zion Mountain and Dale Ligerkeys. The embodiment burst into laughter before speaking. "Do you think I can easily act alone?" Yang Kai stated, snorting, "At least you are a little self-aware." The embodiment added, "I couldn't see you act all lonely. Come, I will accompany you to chat." Yang Kai's corners of mouth twitched. "How is it any different from me talking to myself?" Although he said this, Yang Kai's lonely mood very soon cleared up. The little sense of loss that had been there had disappeared. There is one thing I haven't told you, the embodiment suddenly continued in a solemn voice. What's the matter? Yang Kai asked. The embodiment replied, I feel that my cultivation has reached a bottleneck. Yang Kai stated, it's usual to encounter a bottleneck while cultivating. It's not your very first time cultivating, you should. Before he could finish, Yang Kai suddenly realized that something was extremely wrong. The embodiment added, logically speaking, a heaven-defying secret art like the heaven-devouring battle law should not have any bottlenecks. You have also studied this secret art and should understand what I mean. Yang Kai nodded. He had indeed researched this secret art after he obtained it from Wu Meng Xuan. At that time, he had felt that this secret art was too heaven-defying. Everything in the world generally had some kind of energy in it, so theoretically there was nothing the heaven-devouring battle law couldn't devour. Furthermore, there should not be any bottleneck when cultivating with it. But now, the embodiment had encountered a bottleneck, which was undoubtedly abnormal. I have a feeling that this bottleneck cannot be broken through cultivation nor opportunity. Are you sure the secret art passed by Wu Meng Xuan is complete? Hearing this, Yang Kai couldn't help but be suspicious. If the heavenly devouring battle law taught by Wu Meng Xuan was incomplete, then the situation encountered by the embodiment was well within reason. But Yang Kai couldn't figure out why Wu Meng Xuan taught him an incomplete secret art. If it was to repay Yang Kai for saving his life, then this price was too high. This secret art was known as the #1 secret art in the star boundary. The heaven-devouring great emperor had climbed to the top of the star boundary relying on this secret art, so every master and emperor coveted it. Looking back now, Yang Kai realized that many things back then could be considered dubious. After the Shattered Star Sea closes, let's take a trip to Blue Feather Sect and ask Wu Meng Xuan for a clear answer. Yang Kai pondered for a moment before coming to a decision. In the past, he was afraid of Wu Meng Xuan. First, the opponent's background was pretty big as an authentic descendant of the heaven-devouring great emperor. Wu Meng Xuan also had many cards up his sleeve. More importantly, Yang Kai was far weaker than him at the time. But now, the situation was no longer the same as it used to be. Among the cultivators of the same realm, Yang Kai didn't need to fear anyone. Even if, after all these years, Wu Meng Xuan really broke through to the emperor realm, Yang Kai had the confidence to challenge him. In the starry sky, Yang Kai flew forward. It had been nearly a month since he parted with Hua King Si and the others, and during this time, his harvest was mediocre. Relying on the 6-pointed star seal, Yang Kai could sense some source strength fluctuations every few days. All the source strength he encountered were completely cleaned out by him and the embodiment. The embodiment also had a star source. The reason why its body was so huge was that it had merged with the floating continent. The floating continent had given birth to a star source a long time ago, so the two had become integrated. The amount of source strength they had collected, however, wasn't much. Yang Kai had also encountered a dozen people who came looking for trouble. Because of the special function of the star seal, the cultivators in the Shattered Star Sea would often start fighting as soon as they met. Naturally, Yang Kai didn't show them any mercy and killed them all. However, the 6-pointed star seal didn't show any signs of upgrading. It had only become slightly brighter. Today, Yang Kai sensed source strength fluctuations once again. He immediately changed his direction and shot off. While he was en route, Yang Kai sensed two slightly different energy fluctuations. He was familiar with these fluctuations. It was obviously the induction between star seals. In other words, two people had already arrived at the location of the shattered star source. Yang Kai hesitated for a while, but didn't change his direction. Rather, he sped up and shot straight towards these people, very soon arriving at a huge asteroid. This asteroid was at least several thousand meters in radius and was floating through the starry sky. Its surface was flat and glossy. What surprised Yang Kai was that he could sense source strength fluctuations coming from this asteroid. In other words, there were some shattered star source fragments in this asteroid, and the amount wasn't small either. This was pretty strange. The shattered sources Yang Kai had encountered before were all found on some broken cultivation stars. This was the first time he had encountered this kind of shattered source, which seemed to be formed from an asteroid. At this moment, there were two people on the asteroid already, a man and a woman, both of them in the second-order Dao source realm. The man and woman appeared to be fighting each other for the source strength here, and it was not clear how long they had been fighting for. When Yang Kai arrived, both of them were panting, their auras slightly chaotic, clearly exhausted. Yang Kai found the clothing of the man on the left a little familiar. The man appeared to be in his 30s and had a fierce look on his face. The woman on the right had a graceful figure and her face was sharp and thin, giving off a wicked look. Furthermore, her aura gave an uncomfortable feeling. It was very cold. This kind of coldness was very different from the coldness of an ice attribute secret art like that of Ice Heart Valley's disciples. This cold gave rise to an instinctive repulsion in others, like this woman didn't belong to this world. These two were locked in heated combat, but the sudden appearance of Yang Kai had immediately startled them. They leapt back, one after another, and turned to stare at Yang Kai. After scanning with their divine senses and realizing that Yang Kai was a third-order Dao Source Realm cultivator, their expressions immediately turned serious. Both of them were only in the second order, so they had fought a hard struggle against one another with no clear winner, but if they now had to face Yang Kai, they definitely had no chance of winning in their current state. Yang Kai indifferently glanced at the two before focusing his gaze on the back of their hands. To his surprise, both of them had 5-pointed star seals. According to Yang Kai's understanding of star seals, there weren't many 5-pointed star seals that were naturally generated. Most of them were 3-pointed or 4-pointed. Since these two both had 5-pointed star seals, they must have killed a lot of people in the Shattered Star Sea. They are not a good bunch. Yang Kai coldly snorted in his heart. Seeing Yang Kai stand there without speaking a single word, the two felt a little stressed. The woman was unable to take the silence anymore and she forced a smile to give Yang Kai a friendly nod. However, before she could say anything, the other man interrupted her, cupping his fists and stating, "Greetings, this one is Northern Territory Seeking Passion Sect disciple, Guanqi. I wonder how I should address this friend." Seeking Passion Sect. Yang Kai raised his brow, seeming to have been struck with realization. He was still wondering why the other party's robes looked familiar, but now it turned out he was a disciple of the Seeking Passion Sect. When he thought of the Seeking Passion Sect, Yang Kai recalled Feng Shi and Feng Xuan, the two shameless fellows, one old and one young. The old liked to bully the weak using his strength, while the young liked to bully the weak using his status. When he first entered the Shattered Star Sea, Yang Kai had even suffered a huge loss at Feng Zai's hands. That Emperor Authority bead had almost cost him his life, so, naturally, Yang Kai had no good feelings towards Seeking Passion Sect. Seeing Yang Kai's reaction, Guanqi raised his brow and asked, "Friend, are you also from the Northern Territory?" Yang Kai coldly snorted and scoffed, "Whether I am from the Northern Territory or not, it's none of your damn business." Guanqi found it a little hard to swallow Yang Kai's complete impoliteness. He was a second-order Dao Source realm, one minor realm lower than Yang Kai, but he was an elite disciple of Seeking Passion Sect. Since he could enter the Shattered Star Sea, it was evident that his aptitude was extraordinary. If he was outside, he would really not care about a third-order Dao Source realm cultivator. Simply reporting his name and his sect would be enough for most third-order Dao Source realms to prostrate themselves before him. But now, he just had a heated fight, and his strength was less than half of his peak. What's more, Yang Kai didn't look like someone easy to talk to, so why would he take a dive in a poisonous pool? All he could do was swallow his anger for now. On the other hand, seeing Yang Kai not giving Guanqi any face, the woman suddenly became relaxed. She was afraid that Yang Kai and Guanqi knew each other, or that he had some connection with the Northern Territory's Seeking Passion Sect. If that had been the case, she could only choose to escape. Now the situation was undoubtedly something she liked to see. So, she suddenly burst into a peal of bell-like melodious laughter, attracting everyone's attention before she mocked, "What thing is Seeking Passion Sect? They even dare to utter their name in the Shattered Star Sea. I wonder how thick your face is." Being mocked by Yang Kai first and now ridiculed by this woman, Guanqi's face turned quite gloomy. The woman completely ignored him and instead bowed to Yang Kai, winking at him as she bat her lashes and spoke in a sultry tone, "Greetings, senior brother. This junior sister is Eastern Territory's Netherworld Sect disciple, Yu Ying." Yang Kai's pupil shrank as he blurted out, "Netherworld Sect." Yu Ying was stunned, wondering why Yang Kai showed such a big reaction. She cautiously asked, "Senior brother seems to have heard of my Netherworld Sect." Yang Kai took a deep breath as he calmed his excitement before he stated with a smile, "I have naturally heard of it. Netherworld Sect's name resounds like thunder in one's ears. I have long heard of your noble sect. How could I not have heard of it?" When Guanqi heard Yang Kai say so, he almost breathed flames of anger. Earlier, when he had reported that he was a disciple of Seeking Passion Sect, Yang Kai had rebuffed him without any trace of politeness, But when this woman reported that she was from Netherworld sect, he had heaped praise upon her. The difference in treatment was just too much. In the entire star boundary, both Netherworld sect and Seeking Passion sect were actually top sects in their respective territories, enjoying similar status across the world. But Yang Kai's different reaction made Guan Qi feel deeply insulted. He was so angry that he wanted to attack them and kill this shameless couple. Chapter 2438, Steamy Talk. Published by Divine Tao Library. Translator, Salavan and Ashish. Translation checker, Pew Pew Lasergun. Editor and proofreader, Leo of Zion Mountain and Dale Ligerkeys. In Guan Qi's opinion, Yang Kai was definitely a lecher who was weak to beauties. Judging by how Yang Kai was fawning over Yu Ying, he had definitely fallen for her beauty, and this girl wasn't anything good either. When Guan Qi had met her, she had giggled and flirted with him, trying to make him give her the star source here, but after she was rejected, she started attacking without any hesitation. Now, without even batting an eye, she was fawning over this newcomer. She was shameless to the core, having not the slightest self-respect or dignity. Yu Ying smiled and asked, "Does this senior brother have some connection with my Netherworld sect?" It might have seemed that she was asking a casual question, but she was really showing meticulousness because she knew that she couldn't trust anyone in the Shattered Star Sea. Yang Kai had only said that their sect's name resounded like thunder. How could she believe that he didn't hold any malicious intention towards her just based on this? She needed to inquire a little more so that she could be sure that the other party wasn't just playing with her, since she could not compete with a third-order Dao Source realm. Obviously there is. Yang Kai slightly smiled. He saw through Yu Ying's meticulous thoughts and pondered for a moment before adding, "I came from the Grand Desolation Starfield. I wonder if junior sister has heard of it." Yu Ying's pretty eyes lit up after hearing this as she cried out in surprise, "Grand Desolation Starfield." Yang Kai burst into laughter and continued, "Junior sister, since you have heard of the Grand Desolation Starfield, you should know senior brother Yin Lesheng pretty well, yes?" Yin Lesheng was from the Grand Desolation Starfield, and just like Lu Xianyun, he was a former overlord from that starfield. Yang Kai hadn't expected that he would actually run into someone from the Eastern Territories Netherworld sect in the Shattered Star Sea. He had hoped for it, but he hadn't expected it to be so easy. Before he departed from Thousand Leaves sect, he had been thinking of going to the Netherworld sect to look for Yin Lesheng to find out about the whereabouts of Co. Unfortunately, things didn't turn out as he expected. Before Yang Kai could arrive in the Eastern Territory, he was swept into the solitary void-sealed world, and then was later sent to the Northern Territory, which had made his plans go awry. At this moment though, he had actually run into someone from the Netherworld sect. Naturally, Yang Kai was pleasantly surprised. And if by some chance Yin Lesheng had come to the Shattered Star Sea as well, Yang Kai believed that he could get his location from Yu Ying. "If I want to find Co, I can only start from Yin Lesheng." In a flash, Yang Kai's gaze towards Yu Ying changed, filling with a fiery light. Yu Ying had obviously noticed this and turned shy at just the right moment as she stated in a low voice, "Senior brother Yin, he has been very good to me." "Senior brother?" Yang Kai raised his brow as he asked in surprise. It had been just 6 or 7 years since Yin Lesheng arrived in the star boundary from the Grand Desolation Starfield. Even if he had entered the Netherworld sect, he shouldn't have been able to become a senior brother in such a short time. Yu Ying was a second-order Dao Source realm cultivator, but she was addressing Yin Lesheng as senior brother, so wouldn't that mean that Yin Lesheng's cultivation was higher than hers? Naturally, it is senior brother. Yu Ying smiled. Senior brother Yin might have joined the sect recently, but his aptitude is superb. He was personally taken in by the sect master as a disciple and advanced to the third-order Dao Source realm just before the Shattered Star Sea opened. Yang Kai gasped in shock upon hearing this. Yin Lesheng actually reached the third-order Dao Source realm in such a short amount of time. Yang Kai thought that his cultivation speed was quite quick, but Yin Lesheng's wasn't bad either, basically keeping pace with him. Compared to Io, Qi Yue, and the others' current cultivation, Yin Lesheng's progress was terrifying. Yu Ying smiled and continued, "Senior brother Yin is a star master from the lower star field, and he has received much care from the sect master, enjoying many resources. Be that as it may, it is still a miracle to reach the third-order Dao Source realm in such a short time. The year he joined the sect, I was also a first-order Dao Source realm, but now, he. While speaking, a saddened look appeared on her face, appearing a bit ashamed to compare her progress with Yin Lesheng's. Senior brother Yin's aptitude is extraordinary. He is also the person I admire the most in my life. Knowing that he has already advanced to the third-order Dao Source realm, I am truly gratified. Yang Kai barely suppressed the nauseating feeling in his heart and spoke words of praise. Yu Ying seemed to have eliminated the suspicion and vigilance in her heart because he had spoken about the Grand Desolation Field and Yin Lisheng. It was evident that Yang Kai and Yin Lisheng had deep ties, otherwise, he shouldn't have been aware of such secret information. Isn't this senior brother also a third-order Dao Source realm master? In this junior sister's opinion, you aren't worse than senior brother Yin, said Yu Ying, smiling. I don't dare to compare myself with senior brother Yin. I was able to reach this point because I encountered an extraordinary opportunity. If it had just been through regular cultivation, how could I stand a chance against senior brother Yin's heaven-defying aptitude? Back then, in the Grand Desolation Starfield, I received many favors and guidance from him. In fact, it was only thanks to him that I was able to come to the star boundary. I had planned to join your noble sect, but unfortunately, the Starlight Corridor collapsed at that time and I was thrown out into the Southern Territory. Since then, I never had the chance to pay homage to your noble sect. You were also going to join our sect? Yu Ying looked at Yang Kai in surprise before asking, why haven't I heard about you from senior brother Yin? Judging by her tone, she seemed to know Yin Lisheng fairly well. Yang Kai smiled and explained, senior brother Yin most likely assumed I had died. After all, I was seriously injured at that time. But that became a blessing in disguise. Not only did I not die, I also gained a great opportunity. So, that's how it is. Yu Ying nodded without doubting anything. Yang Kai changed the topic, asked, by the way, is senior brother Yin also in the Shattered Star Sea now? He is. 12 of our sect's disciples have come here. Naturally, senior brother Yin had a quota too, replied Yu Ying. Wonderful. Yang Kai excitedly shouted, I have always wanted to go to the Eastern Territory to meet my senior brother all these years, but it was simply too far. Who would have thought that I would encounter junior sister Yu in the Shattered Star Sea? Tell me, is this not fate? Yu Ying giggled and added, it is this junior sister who is blessed to meet senior brother here. By the way, how should I address senior brother? Feng De, my name is Feng De. Yang Kai replied. Feng De was indeed a real character, a burly bald-headed man. Just like Lu Xianyun, he was together with Yin Lisheng in the Starlight Corridor. However, he was later killed by Yang Kai. Since Yang Kai wanted to impersonate someone from the Grand Desolation Starfield, he had used this name. Who knows what kind of expression Yin Lisheng would show when he heard that Feng De had come back from the dead. Greetings, senior brother Feng. After having chatted with Yang Kai, Yu Ying was no longer suspicious of him. Instead, she was acting quite familiar. A glimmer flashed in her eyes as she asked, senior brother Feng, are you still interested in joining our sect? Or is senior brother already part of another sect? Yang Kai promptly replied, how could I belong to any sect? I had joined a small sect before, but it was destroyed not long after. I have been wandering alone since then. While speaking, he looked at Yu Ying with expectation. I do indeed wish to join your noble sect, but unfortunately, I never got the chance to meet senior brother Yin and did not know anyone else who could give me a recommendation. So, I didn't dare to take any liberties. Yu Ying smiled and stated, that's a simple matter to resolve. I will take you to senior brother Yin when we are done with the things here. When you see senior brother Yin, you can ask him yourself. I believe he will not refuse you. Really? Yang Kai was overjoyed. Why would junior sister lie to you? Yu Ying slightly smiled, flying over and leaning her soft and fragrant figure against Yang Kai before meaningfully asking, when senior brother Feng joins our sect, don't forget to take good care of this junior sister. Yang Kai immediately showed a lustful look as he agreed, nodding repeatedly, if I can really join your noble sect, then junior sister Yu will be my great benefactor. This Feng will never treat you like an outsider. Yu Ying broke into a giggle, then, let me thank senior brother Feng in advance. The two began a steamy chat, while the gloominess of the nearby Guan Chi's face only increased. When Yang Kai stated that he came from some Grand Desolation Starfield, he had already realized something was wrong. Later, the more the two fools talked, the more passionate they became. The unfriendly look in this Feng De's eyes gave him a sense of crisis. At this moment, the two of them were acting more like senior brother and junior sister, obviously intent on pulling their relationship closer, leaving Guan Chi anxious. He might have been able to fight off Yu Ying before, but with Yang Kai added to the mix, he had absolutely no chance of winning. And judging by Yang Kai's previous attitude, he clearly didn't have a good impression of the Seeking Passion sect. Since he was a Seeking Passion sect disciple, what good would it do to bargain here? He wanted to escape, but he didn't dare to act rashly, lest he draw their murderous intentions. But if he didn't leave now, what could he do? Considering all this, he clenched his teeth and stated, cupping his fist, "Friends, you can continue with your chat, this Guan will take his leave first." While speaking, his figure swayed and he prepared to retreat. Yu Ying, who was chatting with Yang Kai with a smile on her face, suddenly turned cold, her expression changing as quickly as flipping a page, and she shouted in a piercing voice, "Where do you think you're going?" Just as she screamed, she raised her bare and tender arm as a dark and gloomy ghost claw tore towards Guan Qi. The ghost claw was exuding an incomparably sinister and cold aura. Guan Qi's face changed and he immediately sent out a barrage of fist shadows towards the sky. Deafening explosions immediately rang out as the two moves cancelled one another out. But having been blocked by Yu Ying like this, Guan Qi didn't dare to leave. Senior brother Feng, Yu Ying suddenly coquettishly called out to Yang Kai, shaking his arm as she stamped her foot and pleaded, "He is bullying me, don't you care?" Yang Kai immediately got goosebumps and cold sweat formed on his back. He was barely suppressing the nausea in his heart as he stated with a cold snort, "You, rat, dare to bully my junior sister you, are you really that tired of living?" Even though he didn't like members of the Seeking Passion sect, at the end of day, he had no grievances or grudges with this Guan Qi. Therefore, there was no reason for him to kill Guan Qi. Not to mention, he didn't like being treated as someone else's dog. Obviously, Yu Yin was using her power to embarrass Guan Qi, and Yang Kai disdained such practices, so although he was presenting a vicious stance, he didn't release the slightest murderous intent. Guan Qi grit his teeth and explained himself, "Brother Feng, I discovered the star source here first, and this young lady wanted to snatch it from me after the fact. We had a disagreement, which led to a fight. She hasn't suffered any injuries and this Guan doesn't want this star source either. I just want to leave this place. Friend, I'm asking you to allow me to leave." Peak, Chapter 2439, You're Also a Star Master. Published by Divine Tao Library. Translator, Salavan and Ashish. Translation checker, Pew Pew Laser Gun. Editor and proofreader, Leo of Zion Mountain and Dale Ligerkeys. Who is robbing you? Obviously it was you who was attracted to me and tried to use the star source here to seduce me, and after you were rejected by me, you became angry out of shame and wanted to use force. Fortunately, I was prepared, otherwise, you would have surely succeeded, Yu Ying aggrievedly cried, guarding herself in frustration as if Guan Qi had really done something wrong to her. Guan Qi looked at Yu Ying with widened eyes as he rebuked in disbelief, "Do you know no shame?" Yu Ying's pretty face turned extremely gloomy as she lashed out, "You dare call me shameless?" Guan Qi angrily rebuked, "I discovered the star source here first and you wanted to snatch it. Why are you blaming others while you yourself are to be blamed?" Suddenly, the two were locked in an endless quarrel, citing that the star source here was first discovered by them and the other party wanted to snatch it. They both repeated the same words, but there was no evidence for either side, so there was no way to prove that what they were saying was indeed true. Yang Kai indifferently stood on one side, sneering in his heart. If my guess is right, Guan Qi should have discovered the star source first and Yu Ying tried to snatch it. The reason was very simple. Since Guan Qi could come to the Shattered Star Sea, it meant his aptitude was pretty good in the Seeking Passion sect. He could be regarded as an elite disciple, and as an elite, he must be cultivating the Seeking Passion supreme art. This secret art of Seeking Passion sect followed the Tao of Passion, so even if their elite disciples were a little lustful and each of them had countless wives and concubines, because of the characteristics of the Seeking Passion supreme art, they would never force themselves on a woman. When they wanted to get a woman, they would inevitably need to seduce and win her over, so the other party fell in love with them. Yu Ying stated that Guan Qi had lusted for her, which was obviously nonsense. If Yang Kai hadn't dealt with the Seeking Passion sect in the Northern Territory, he wouldn't have been aware of this particular detail. But then again, neither of these two were good people. They were fighting like dogs, biting each other. The two quarreled for a while before Yu Ying shook Yang Kai's arm and sweetly whispered, "Senior brother Feng, this person is bullying me. You have to do something on my behalf." By the looks of her stance, she really wanted to rely on Yang Kai's strength to wear the lion's skin. Yang Kai didn't want to watch it anymore, so he let out a cold snort and stated directly, "Since you have offended my junior sister Yu, this matter can't be forgotten." Guan Qi gritted his teeth and shouted in a low voice, glaring at Yang Kai, "What do you want? Friend, I have no past grudge or grievance with you, so don't go too far." He was neither humble nor overbearing, catching Yang Kai by surprise. After pondering for a while, Yang Kai sneered and stated, "Fortunately, junior sister Yu didn't suffer any injuries. Otherwise, this Feng would have already taken your life." Guan Qi relaxed after hearing this. From the looks of it, it seemed that Yang Kai wasn't planning on making things too difficult for him. This surprised him as he had no idea what Yang Kai wanted. In this damned place, a third-order Dao Source Realm master had plenty of reasons and the ability to kill him. And to top it off, any conflicts at this point would mean a death in vain. "Who said I'm not hurt? My heart is deeply wounded. If you don't believe it, senior brother, you examine it for yourself," Yu Ying whispered in a tender voice, and while speaking, she pushed her heart before Yang Kai, as though saying, "I'm all yours." Black lines appeared on Yang Kai's face as he stated, "There is someone here." Yu Ying giggled and said, "Senior brother Feng, you are really interesting." She thought that Yang Kai had thin skin and was embarrassed to have excessive contact in front of others. Yang Kai quickly changed the subject and shouted at Guan Qi, "Let's do it like this. You will have to leave something behind and I'll let you go." "What?" Guan Qi's face changed as he cried in shock. If Yang Kai's request wasn't excessive, he might agree, but if it's too excessive, even if he had to put his life on the line, he would not let Yang Kai have his way. "Leave your space ring as compensation for my junior sister Yu," Yang Kai stated coldly. Yu Ying was a little unhappy because Yang Kai said that he was going to let Guan Qi off, but when she heard the next sentence, she immediately raised her brows in glee and looked at Yang Kai in gratitude. Guan Qi pondered for a moment in silence. He seemed to have also realized that he was currently a fish on the chopping board that couldn't resist at all, so he reluctantly removed his space ring and threw it to Yang Kai. Yang Kai casually took it, secretly inspected it with his divine sense to make sure that there was nothing in it that he was interested in, before gifting it to Yu Ying. "Can this Guan go now?" Guan Qi anxiously asked. "Scram!" Yang Kai fiercely shouted. Guan Qi bitterly glanced at Yang Kai and Yu Ying, as if he wanted to burn the image of this shameless couple in the depths of his mind. Only then did he use some kind of secret technique to flee at a very fast speed. "Senior brother Feng, if you make a move now, you can definitely catch him by surprise." Yu Ying whispered in Yang Kai's ear while secretly circulating her source qi, preparing to make her move at any moment. "She is truly vicious." Yang Kai was secretly shocked. Even now, she didn't plan to let Guan Qi go. She wanted to take his life. Presumably, if not for her being uncertain if she would succeed, she would have already acted. She wanted to use Yang Kai's strength to kill Guan Qi. But much to her disappointment, from the start of Guan Qi's departure, Yang Kai had no intention of making a move. Yu Ying was a little dissatisfied by this and knit her brow, secretly thinking that this senior brother surnamed Feng was a little too kind. That Guan Qi had a 5-pointed star seal. If I could have killed him and stole his star seal, then my star seal would have upgraded. I missed this huge opportunity for nothing. Yu Ying's joy of getting Guan Qi's space ring had diminished a lot. The disciples of the Seeking Passion sect aren't good to provoke. He might have some card up his sleeve. Once he was forced to use that card, we might not be able to retreat scot-free, Yang Kai indifferently explained. In fact, he just didn't want to be used by Yu Ying. If he had met Guan Qi alone, the result might not have been the same. "I guess, you are right," Yu Ying approvingly nodded before continuing with a smile. "Senior brother Feng is quite thorough." After a pause, she asked, "Senior brother Feng, about that ring." Although Yang Kai had just mentioned that the ring was meant as compensation for her loss, it was Yang Kai who had robbed it, so at this moment, she had to ask for his opinion. "Junior sister, take it as my gift to you," Yang Kai slightly smiled. Yu Ying beamed with joy as she put the ring away and stated, "Senior brother Feng, you are so good." Yang Kai smiled and continued, "Senior brother is just gifting at the expense of others, so junior sister doesn't need to care." He then quickly changed the subject, "Right, I haven't seen senior brother Yin for several years, why don't we go look for him now?" Deep down in his heart, he couldn't wait to meet Yin Lisheng and inquire about the whereabouts of Cio. If it weren't for this reason, why would he try to please Yu Ying and even more, tolerate her shamelessness? It's not that simple to find senior brother Yin. Although we Netherworld sect disciples cultivated a certain secret technique before we came to this place which allows us to sense each other from far away, the Shattered Star Sea is vast and we might not see each other until it closes. However, senior brother Feng, rest assured, even if we don't find senior brother Ying, when you come to my Netherworld sect in the future, you only need to report this junior sister's name, and this junior sister will definitely welcome you in person. Yang Kai was struck with a chill when he heard this. If Yin Lisheng wasn't found, what would he do with Yu Ying? Yu Ying added, but it's not like there is no hope. We are still in the periphery of the shattered star sea. Senior brother Yin must be heading towards the central region, so we simply need to travel deeper before I can sense his position. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go, Yang Kai anxiously proposed. Yu Ying glanced at him and said, oh, senior brother Feng, you are really anxious. It is important to find senior brother Yin, but the star source here is not to be missed either. Yang Kai smacked his head and said, good, I almost forgot about this. Many thanks for junior sister Yu's reminder. Yu Ying pursed her lips into a smile, senior brother Feng is so cute. Yang Kai stated, in that case, you and I should find a place to refine the star source here, and then we will go look for senior brother Yin. Good. Next, the two moved separately, each looking for a safe location before they sat down cross-legged and started refining the source strength. The source strength here wasn't bad, enough for two ordinary Dao Source Realm cultivators to spend an entire month to completely absorb it. Fortunately, the shattered star sea remained open for quite some time, allowing cultivators to refine a lot of source strength despite it being a time-consuming process. If the duration was too short, the cultivators who entered here basically wouldn't gain any benefits at all. Yang Kai was anxious to find Yin Lesheng though, so he directly used his star refining art, and in an instant, the source strength lingering about this asteroid swarmed toward him, transforming into specks of starlight that passed through his skin and merged with his body. After 2 days, the source strength of the asteroid was completely refined. This was the result of Yang Kai holding back. If he had gone all out, perhaps it wouldn't have taken him half a day to absorb the source strength here. 99% of the star source here was refined by Yang Kai, so Yu Ying ended up with a pitiful amount. 2 days later, the two reunited and Yu Ying looked at Yang Kai with a weird expression and asked, senior brother Feng, why did the source strength here disappear so soon? I don't know either, Yang Kai pretended to be ignorant. Yu Ying didn't see him while he was circulating the star refining art, so there was no way for her to know anything. Yu Ying stated, I could feel it, all the source strength was converging towards senior brother Feng's location. Senior brother Feng, your refining speed is much faster than mine. At this point, she seemed to have struck with realization and her countenance changed as she asked in a shaking voice, senior brother Feng, you wouldn't happen to be a star master? Yang Kai was stunned. However, he agreed with a nod, I am also a star master of the Grand Desolation star field. Yu Ying couldn't help but cover her cherry red lips with her soft hands as she looked at Yang Kai with excitement, as if she had seen some marvelous treasure, whispering in a low voice, senior brother Feng, are you really a star master? Chapter 2440, Holy Sun. Published by Divine Dao Library. Translator, Salavan and Ashish. Translation checker, Pew Pew Laser Gun. Editor and proofreader, Leo of Zion Mountain and Dale Ligerkeys. Yu Ying looked inexplicably surprised, which Yang Kai found extremely strange. Is there something wrong with that? Yu Ying excitedly explained, I heard rumors that the Shattered Star Sea is the best place for Star Masters to seek opportunity because their speed of refining source strength is far greater than that of others. In the past, I used to think that it was just a lie, but now, it seems those rumors are indeed true. Your speed of refining is much faster than I expected. Yang Kai curiously asked, do Star Masters really get to enjoy such benefits? Senior brother Feng, don't you know? Yang Kai shook his head and replied, I have been alone since I came in. And I have been refining the star sources like this. I thought that it was the same for everyone. How could that be? The same? Yu Ying screamed, if you let this junior sister refine the star source here alone, I would take at least 2 months. That long? Yang Kai looked as if he had been greatly taken aback. Yu Ying looked at Yang Kai with a fiery hot gaze and explained, senior brother, do you know how amazing you are? I guess it should be true for senior brother Yin as well. Yang Kai agreed, nodding, senior brother is stronger than me. Naturally, he is more amazing than me. While saying this, Yang Kai sneered in his heart. Yin Lesheng might also be a star master and may enjoy some benefits, but it was impossible for him to refine it this quickly without the star refining art. At best, he would be a little faster than others. It was the star refining art that made the Shattered Star Sea a walk in the park. Senior brother Fen really has a bright future. Yu Ying looked at Yang Kai with a fiery gaze. She knew that Yang Kai, like Yin Lesheng, came from the Grand Desolation star field and his aptitude was good. So, he most likely would achieve high success and status someday. However, after learning that he was in fact a star master, Yu Ying immediately understood that the Feng de before her was a second Yin Lesheng. If she could recruit such a person into the Netherworld sect by herself, her status would also rise. She would be greatly appreciated by the sect's upper echelon. And when her brother Feng's cultivation reached the top, who would dare to provoke her? In a flash, Yu Ying made a decision. She secretly made up her mind that she would find a chance to occupy her senior brother Feng's heart and body so that only she could use him. Junior sister Yu is too polite. Since the star source here is already finished, why don't we set off? Yang Kai's heart was preoccupied with Yin Lisheng, so he didn't want to waste time chatting with her. Yu Ying agreed with a nod, good. Saying so, she flicked her wrist and summoned a small flying artifact. This artifact looked extremely delicate, but the energy fluctuations emanating from it weren't weak. Surprisingly, it was a Dao Source high-grade flight-type artifact, on par with the wooden boat Yang Kai used. Yang Kai was secretly shocked as he thought to himself, this Yu Ying is indeed an elite of one of the top sects in the star boundary. To his surprise, a mere second-order Dao Source realm cultivator like Yu Ying had easily taken out such a precious artifact. Senior brother Feng, why don't you join me? Yu Ying winked at Yang Kai and appeared shy before inviting in a sweet voice, we will need to travel for a long time, so we won't be lonely if we go together. Yang Kai's skin crawled as he shuddered. He didn't want to stay in the same room with her, but at this point, it seemed too inappropriate to refuse. So after a moment of pondering, he could only choke down his disgust and agree, of course. Yu Ying invited with a smile, senior brother Feng, please come in. While speaking, the hatch of the flying shuttle opened. The two entered one after another. After entering, Yang Kai found that the space inside the flying artifact wasn't that big. Besides a bridge from which to control the artifact, there was only a bedroom. However, the interior of the artifact was luxuriously decorated by Yu Ying and was filled with a luxurious fragrance that lingered at the tip of Yang Kai's nose. Who knows how many people she had invited into her shuttle. In any case, Yang Kai didn't like this environment at all. Yu Ying appeared bashful as her eyes were filled with spring, as if she was expecting something amazing to happen. Yang Kai didn't wait for her to speak and simply stated, Junior sister Yu, I have been fighting a lot of people recently, making me exhaust a lot of my source chi. So, I will have to use junior sister's bedroom. I will recuperate for the time being and take your place after a few days. After having said this, Yang Kai immediately walked into the only bedroom, closed the door, and sat down cross-legged. Yu Yin stood there blankly. It was obvious as to what she was thinking. After a good while, she let out a snort before she turned around to control the artifact. Over the next few days, Yang Kai lived very cautiously and bitterly. Yu Ying always came up with ways to tease him, harass him, and kept pestering him, hoping he would give in to her. If he didn't need Yu Ying to search for Yin Lisheng, Yang Kai would have already slapped this shameless woman to death. In any case, having been with her for so many days, Yang Kai knew there wasn't anything decent about Yu Ying. Yang Kai spent most of his time in retreat, inside her bedroom. Except for replacing Yu Ying to pilot the shuttle, Yang Kai didn't come out, so Yu Ying never found a chance to further their relationship. Occasionally, they would find some shattered stars or asteroids with source strength along the way. Naturally, the two would not miss them. Whenever they refined this source strength though, Yang Kai would always use the star refining art with all his strength, resulting in little benefit for Yu Ying. Because of this, Yu Ying couldn't help but grumble a little. She felt that this Fengda wasn't generous enough, as whenever they encountered something good, he would unceremoniously snatch it all, leaving nothing for her. However, Yu Ying didn't dare to not give Yang Kai face. First, Yang Kai's cultivation was higher, and second, she also hoped that Yang Kai would shelter and take care of her after entering the Netherworld sect. So, even though she was extremely dissatisfied, she still didn't grumble in front of Yang Kai, only cursing him in secret. But oblivious to her, Yang Kai's divine sense had been paying attention to her movements while he was in retreat, so he knew all about her sentiment. He also understood how evil she was. Today, Yang Kai, who was in retreat, suddenly opened his eyes as he sensed some quickly approaching star seal fluctuations. Star seal fluctuations meant that a cultivator was approaching, but he had no idea how many there were because he could only sense the existence of the cultivators whose star seals were lower than his. If the star seal level was the same or higher than his, he couldn't sense them. Considering all this, Yang Kai sent a message to Yu Ying, Junior sister Yu, some people are approaching us. Aboard Yu Ying was piloting the shuttle, but the moment she heard this, she immediately asked in surprise, where are they and how many of them are there? Judging by how ignorant she looked, obviously, she hadn't noticed the ones approaching, which meant that the star seals of the people coming were all on the same level as hers or higher. To the east, as for how many, there are at least 3 of them. Because Yang Kai could only sense the fluctuations of 3 star seals, he was certain that there were at least 3 approaching. While speaking to this point, he paused and then added, "They have increased their speed. They are rushing towards us." Yu Ying was greatly shocked after hearing this, but just as she was about to accelerate and leave this place, a streak of light appeared in her sight. In that fleeting moment, the streak of light had arrived not too far away from the shuttle and came to a halt. Immediately afterward, 5 figures suddenly appeared in that location. Yang Kai was secretly surprised because he could only sense the fluctuations of 3 star seals, but now, there were 5 people. In other words, 2 of them had 6-pointed star seals at least. Meanwhile, when Yu Ying saw these 5 figures, her pretty face went pale and she nervously gulped, as if she was very afraid of them. It's too late to run at this point, and any rash move might cause a negative chain reaction. Judging by these people's attitudes, it seems that they were targeting us from the start. Who knows whether this is a blessing or curse? In a flash, Yu Ying felt extremely uneasy. Who are these people? Yang Kai suddenly appeared beside her and asked. Yu Ying's pretty face slightly paled as she replied, "They are disciples of Brahma Holy Land. Brahma Holy Land is also a top sect of the Eastern Territory. Our Netherworld sect is just slightly weaker than theirs." Yang Kai asked again, "And the relation between yours and their sect isn't very good, right?" Yu Ying smiled bitterly as she agreed, "It isn't that bad, but there is still some small friction between the 2 sects, the same as with all disciples from top sects." Yang Kai lightly nodded before he asked, pointing at 2 particular individuals, "Those 2 should be extremely strong." Yu Ying glanced at him in surprise and replied, "Those 2 are the holy sons of Brahma Holy Land, so they are naturally extremely strong. In my sect, only a few senior brothers can compete with them." Holy sons? Yang Kai raised his brow. "I don't know what they are doing here. Senior brother Feng, please don't say anything, I will deal with him," Yu Ying nervously exhorted. She was afraid that Yang Kai would ignorantly offend them, dooming them. "Good," Yang Kai nodded. At that moment, one of the 5 suddenly shouted, "Get out." Yu Ying had a bitter taste in her mouth as she reluctantly opened the shuttle hatch and went out. Yang Kai followed closely behind her. At this point, it was meaningless to hide as the opposite party's divine senses were constantly scanning the shuttle. They must have discovered him a long time ago. After stepping out of the shuttle, Yu Ying politely cupped her fist and gently greeted, "Yu Ying greets senior brother Zhang Hao and senior brother Zhang Xian." The 2 called Zhang Hao and Zhang Xian should be the 2 holy sons of Brahma Holy Land, the ones Yu Ying was afraid of. Both of them were peak Dao Source Realm masters and seemed extremely powerful. As for the remaining 3, they were only in the 2nd order Dao Source Realm, so Yu Ying wasn't too afraid of them. Zhang Hao, who looked a little angry, narrowed his eyes and coldly glared at her before stating, "I was wondering who it was, so it's you, you slut." He didn't show the slightest bit of politeness when he directly called Yu Ying a slut. Obviously, he knew about Yu Ying's infidelity and lasciviousness. After all, both of them were disciples of top sects in the Eastern Territory, so they had some intelligence about one another. What's more, Yu Ying was extremely famous throughout the Eastern Territory for her debauchery. Zhang Xian, on the other hand, glanced at Yang Kai with a meaningful gaze before sarcastically commenting, "In the short time I haven't seen you, you have already changed your man. Yu Ying, you have really opened my eyes."